I always thought of myself as a devoted wife and mother. My marriage wasn't perfect, but it was stable, a well-worn routine of predictable days and quiet evenings. My husband and I had settled into a life of comfortable indifference. Our shared history, built on years of raising our children and weathering life's ups and downs together. Yet somewhere along the way, the spark that once ignited our passion had dimmed into a gentle, unspoken distance. I told myself it was simply part of growing older together, a natural evolution of our lives. Our son, Ethan, had just turned 21, a milestone that seemed to unlock a new chapter in his life. With his newfound independence came a whirlwind of friends and celebrations. Most weekends, our house rang with the sound of loud laughter and the clicking of beer bottles as Ethan's friends filled every room with their exuberance. Amid that boisterous energy, I found solace in knowing that my son was happy and surrounded by people who cared about him. Among Ethan's circle was a young man named Ryan, who seemed to stand apart from the rest. There was an ineffable quality about him, a quiet magnetism that I couldn't quite explain. Ryan was tall, with sandy blonde hair, and an easygoing charm that lit up every room he entered. Polite and respectful to everyone, he carried himself with a confidence that was both gentle and compelling. At 24, he was barely older than Ethan, yet there was something about his presence that stirred emotions in me. I had long thought dormant. It all began on a lazy Saturday afternoon. Ethan and his friends were by the pool, their laughter and shouts of joy mingling with the summer heat. I was in the kitchen, carefully preparing snacks and arranging platters of sandwiches. When Ryan appeared at the doorway, he walked in, dripping wet from the pool, and without hesitation, shirtless and disarmingly sincere, addressed me with a warm smile. "Mrs. Carter," he said, his voice soft and inviting. "Do you need any help?" I tried to keep my eyes on the platter, offering a polite, "No thank you, Ryan. You should go back and enjoy yourself." But he didn't leave. Instead, he lingered by the counter, watching me with an intensity that made my heart skip a beat. "You always take such good care of everyone," he murmured gently. "You deserve to relax, too." Those words caught me off guard for a moment. I forgot how to breathe. It wasn't merely the compliment, it was the way he said it, as if he saw something in me that had been hidden away for years. I laughed nervously, brushing off the encounter with a half-hearted, "That's what moms do yet." As the day passed and the laughter from the pool continued, I couldn't help but notice him again and again. The way his laughter filled the room, the casual ease with which he found excuses to linger near the kitchen. In the following weeks, the quiet tension between us grew. Every stolen glance and fleeting smile added layers to an unexpected connection. I never imagined I'd feel I tried to convince myself it was a harmless crush, a fleeting infatuation that would pass. But deep inside, I recognized a yearning for something more, a spark of passion and recognition that I hadn't felt in years. Then one evening, everything changed. Ethan had gone out with his friends, leaving the house unusually quiet, and still the familiar silence that once comforted me now felt like an invitation. In the soft glow of the kitchen light, Ryan and I found ourselves alone, the absence of the usual clamor creating a space for truth to emerge. "Mrs. Carter," Ryan began hesitantly, at first. "I know this might sound strange, but I see something in you. Something vibrant and alive, that seems hidden beneath all the responsibilities and routine you've given so much to everyone around you. Don't you ever wonder what it would be like to live for yourself, even just for a little while?" His words echoed in the quiet room, stirring memories of dreams long abandoned. I remembered the woman I once was, a woman who believed in passion, adventure, and the thrill of possibility. Over the years, I had lost myself in the roles of wife and mother, sacrificing pieces of my identity to keep the family whole. As Ryan spoke, a torrent of emotions washed over me. I felt a bittersweet mix of guilt, longing, and liberation. The steady, predictable rhythm of my married life had become a cocoon that both comforted and confined me. In his sincere gaze, I saw a reflection of the person I had been and the person I could still become. a woman deserving of love, laughter, and the unexpected beauty of rediscovery. That night, as the house settled into silence, we talked quietly in the kitchen. We shared our fears and our dreams, two souls meeting in a space where vulnerability replaced routine. In the warmth of that conversation, I realized that life, with all its imperfections, still held moments of magic and possibility. I began to understand that it was never too late to rediscover the spark that once set my heart ablaze. In the days that followed, I found myself caught in a delicate balance between duty and desire. I cherished the love I had for my family, yet I also embraced the profound truth that I too deserved to be seen, heard, and loved for who I was. Ryan's presence was a reminder that even in the midst of life's responsibilities, there was room for unexpected tenderness and the hope of new beginnings. This journey was not without its inner turmoil. Each day brought moments of self-reflection, questioning the path I had chosen and the life I had built. There were quiet tears shed in the solitude of the night and hesitant smiles in the light of dawn, a testament to the complexities of love and longing. But through it all, I began to understand that every chapter of life, no matter how familiar, holds the promise of transformation if one is brave enough to embrace it. In that small, seemingly ordinary house where laughter and routine once reigned supreme, a new story was unfolding, a story of rediscovery, of finding beauty in vulnerability, and of the courage to open one's heart to the unexpected. And though the future was uncertain, I knew that I had awakened to a life rich with possibility, where even the quietest moments could spark a flame that burned with the intensity of 1,000 untold dreams. After Ethan had gone out with the rest of his friends, the house fell into an unusual, almost eerie quiet, a silence that contrasted sharply with the usual chaos of young voices, echoing through our rooms. Ryan, however, stayed behind, claiming he wasn't feeling well. Moved by concern and an inexplicable pull, I offered to make him some tea and invited him to sit with me in the living room. As the soft clink of the teapot and the quiet hum of the refrigerator filled the space, we began to talk. In that vulnerable, hushed moment, I discovered how effortless it was to open up to him. Ryan listened with an intensity that I hadn't experienced in years, his eyes fixed on mine, unwavering and filled with a compassion that cut through the numb routine of my everyday life. I spoke of my frustrations, the fears that haunted me, and a deep loneliness I had never fully admitted, even to myself, with each word. I felt an old part of me, stirring a longing for connection and understanding that had lain dormant for far too long. When I finished, Ryan reached out and gently took my hand. His voice, barely above a whisper, broke the silence. "You're incredible, Mrs. Carter. You deserve to feel alive." His words, sincere and tender, sent a shiver through me, a mixture of hope and trepidation that ignited something deep inside. Before I could muster a response, he leaned in and kissed me softly. That first kiss was tender and hesitant, but then it deepened with a hunger that left me breathless, as if every rational thought was drowned by the overwhelming sensation of being truly seen and desired. In that moment, I felt a resurgence of passion I hadn't known in years, a fierce, consuming fire that made me feel wanted and alive. But just as the intensity of our connection began to blossom, the front door swung open and Ethan's familiar voice called out. Panic surged through me. As Ryan quickly stepped back, his expression unreadable, and the spell was abruptly broken. I spent the rest of that evening in a haze, barely able to meet my son's eyes. Guilt and exhilaration warred within me, tearing at my heart. In the days that followed, Ryan and I never spoke of what had happened, yet the memory of that stolen kiss lingered a dangerous secret. We both carried silently. I knew deep down that what had transpired was wrong, that I was risking everything I had built. Yet a small, persistent part of me couldn't help but wonder what might happen if I dared to follow that fragile spark. That night, lying in bed beside my husband Steve, his snoring a rhythmic backdrop to the storm raging inside me, I barely slept. My mind replayed the kiss over and over, the warmth of Ryan's lips, the gentle yet insistent way his hand lingered on mine, the intensity of his gaze that seemed to promise a return to forgotten dreams. It had been so many years since I had felt such passion. I found myself torn between terror at the consequences and a desperate craving for that newfound intimacy. The following day, I tried with every ounce of willpower to avoid Ryan with Ethan busy on a group project. I assumed that meant he wouldn't be around, and I clung to that assumption as a lifeline. Yet, as if fate were determined to test my resolve, the doorbell rang in the late afternoon. My stomach dropped when I opened the door to find Ryan standing there holding a small box of tools. Ethan mentioned, "You needed help fixing the cabinet in the laundry room," he said. Casually, though, his eyes betrayed a flicker of something deeper. Nervousness, perhaps, or the unspoken longing that had drawn us together. I hesitated for a moment before stepping aside, allowing him in. "It's in the back," I said stiffly as I led him down the narrow hallway. The air between us was charged with unspoken tension, each step echoing the tumult inside my heart in the quiet of the laundry room. As Ryan worked on the stubborn cabinet, his usual charm was replaced by an almost palpable solemnity. I watched him from the doorway, my mind swirling with conflicting emotions, guilt for betraying the familiar, safe routine of my life with Steve, and a desperate yearning for the passion and recognition that Ryan had awakened in me. Every creak of the old cabinet seemed to mirror the creaks of my own heart, strained under the weight of secrets and the possibility of transformation. That day marked the beginning of a tumultuous inner journey. In the weeks that followed, each encounter with Ryan became a silent conversation of glances and half-spoken words. I oscillated between the comfort of my well-worn life and the intoxicating promise of something new, a chance to reclaim parts of myself long buried beneath the roles of wife and mother. I questioned everything. Was it betrayal or liberation? Could I risk the life I knew for the possibility of feeling truly alive again? Each night, as I lay in bed listening to Steve's gentle, oblivious snores, I was haunted by the memory of Ryan's kiss. It was as though a door had been cracked open in my soul, letting in a cool breeze of desire and regret. I was terrified of the consequences, yet I craved that feeling, the taste of forbidden passion, that reawakened dreams. I thought we're lost forever in that small, quiet house where routine had once ruled. A delicate, dangerous dance had begun. With every shared look and every lingering touch, I found myself teetering on the edge of a life that promised both heartbreak and an intoxicating sense of renewal. And even as I struggled with the guilt of what had transpired, a part of me, fragile yet unyielding, held on to the hope that perhaps, just perhaps, I could learn to live again with all the raw, unbridled emotion that had been dormant inside me for far too long, hovered near the doorway with an unusual seriousness. Unsure whether I should leave or stay, my heart pounded so loudly that I was convinced he could hear each desperate beat. The silence between us was thick, with anticipation and regret, every second stretching into an eternity. When Ryan finally finished his task, he turned to face me, his expression unreadable, Mrs. Carter. About the other night, he began, his tone hesitant. I interrupted him, my voice trembling with a mix of fear and longing. It was a mistake, a moment of weakness. I managed to say, though every word felt like a betrayal of the truth that surged beneath my skin. Before I could steady myself, Ryan stepped closer. I instinctively backed away until my back hit the wall, trapping me in a confined space where his presence was overwhelming. He was mere inches away now, and his clean, masculine scent filled my senses, pulling me in despite my protests. "Was it really a mistake?" he asked softly, his voice barely above a whisper. "Because I can't stop thinking about you, about how it felt to kiss you." In that moment, I fought the urge to deny it, to push him away, but the truth was undeniable. I couldn't stop thinking about him either. My resolve crumbled as his hand reached out and brushed tenderly along my cheek. "You deserve more than this life." He murmured, his words laced with sincerity. "You deserve to feel alive, to feel wanted." In that instant, the walls I had spent years building around my heart came crashing down. He closed the distance between us, and my lips found his in a desperate, hungry kiss. There was no hesitation this time, no guilt or second thoughts, just a raw, unrestrained passion that consumed us both. His hands roamed over me, igniting a fire I hadn't felt in years, a fire that made me remember what it meant to be desired, not just a wife or a mother, but a woman. In the full, vivid spectrum of her emotions, we stumbled into the laundry room where the mundane, everyday surroundings of my domestic life sharply contrasted with the reckless abandon of our actions. His touch and kisses seemed to erase the world outside, making me forget about my marriage, my family, and the heavy consequences of our choices. When the fever of our passion finally subsided, we sat together in a heavy silence, the weight of what we had done settling over us like a suffocating blanket. I avoided his gaze as shame began to creep in, replacing the euphoria that had so recently enveloped me. This can't happen again. I whispered more to myself than to him, even though deep down I knew those words were nothing but a lie, a desperate attempt to regain control over a life that was suddenly spiraling out of reach in the quiet aftermath. I was left to navigate a turbulent sea of emotions. Every touch, every lingering glance between us had unlocked a part of me I had long kept hidden. I found myself haunted by the memory of his kiss, the way his lips had awakened dormant desires, the caress of his hand that had stirred a passion I had almost forgotten existed. I was terrified of the consequences, yet I craved that feeling with an intensity that bordered on obsession. As I lay awake that night, the rhythmic sounds of my husband's peaceful slumber provided a jarring contrast to the storm raging inside me. Thoughts of Ryan invaded my every quiet moment, each memory of our stolen passion etching itself into the depths of my soul. I questioned everything, the life I had known, the roles I was expected to play, and the possibility that perhaps for one fleeting night I had truly lived. Now standing at the precipice of my old life, and the dangerous allure of the unknown, I realized that every secret, every whispered kiss, carried with it the power to shatter the fragile illusions of safety and certainty. And though I tried to convince myself that it was just a momentary lapse, a mistake born of weakness, the truth was that I had tasted a freedom so intoxicating it threatened to change me forever.